Story 1. I learned a long time ago that if I am lying in bed and cannot fall asleep, I should either turn the light on and start reading, or else get up entirely and watch videos or something. Story 2. Lay in bed in the dark. Devices and television must be off. Keep eyes wide open. Resist the urge to close eyes. Focus on staying awake. Sleep will come more easily. It is called paradoxical intention, and it really works. Story 3. I read this thing a while back and it's been helping. Pick any word. Let's say the word help. Take the first letter, H, and think of as many things that start with H. What I saw said it was supposed to be objects or things, but some nights I just go with it. When or if you get through H, then move on to E, etc. I haven't made it to the end of a word yet. Story 4. Self-meditation. Imagine being on the beach. Imagine the sun warming your face. Imagine the sand on your feet. Slowly walk into the water. Imagine the water being warm. Imagine the water being orange. Imagine the water slowly moving up your body as you walk further into the water. Imagine no sound. Imagine peace. Story 5. The best technique I have discovered for distracting an active mind in order to fall asleep is to start stringing together random, unrelated words in your mind. The goal is that there is no connecting thread from one word to the next. I have no idea why it works, but for me, it has been quite helpful. Story 6. Google sleep hygiene. If you cannot fall asleep in approximately 17 minutes, get up and do something boring. Also, avoid screens 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. Story 7. Almost 2 years ago, I finally got fed up with this enough to talk to a doctor about it. I tried melatonin, exercise, limiting caffeine, meditation, and cannabis. None of them were effective in the long run. She suggested something else, a tricyclic antidepressant called doxepin. It's a mood-stabilizing medication used to treat depression, and it has a side effect of drowsiness. She figured if I got drowsy as it kicked in, that might make it easy to sleep. She was so right. I take it, and within about an hour, my head just gets quiet. The ever-present thinking chatter just fades away. A few minutes later, my eyes get heavy. I stop whatever I'm doing, lie down, and I'm asleep within seconds. It's effortless, and I stay asleep for a solid 8 to 9 hours. It doesn't feel heavy or disorienting like Ambien. I wake up feeling mostly clear-headed. I found that it's best to be gentle in the first half an hour after waking up. No reading news headlines or stressful emails until I'm fully awake and alert again. The only downside is that I have to take it on a pretty consistent schedule. That means taking it at the same time every night. I have to take it within half an hour of the time I took it the night before. If I take it later than that, I start to become anxious and can lose a night of sleep. If I take it sooner than that, it works okay. But then I've pushed my bedtime earlier and have to deal with that. Most of the time, this isn't an issue, but there's been a few late-night music or comedy events I've had to pass on because of my medicinally enforced bedtime. Getting regular, solid sleep has been life-changing. It didn't solve all of my issues, but it gave me way more energy to take on other types of self-improvement. I'm eating better, I'm socializing more, and I'm losing a lot fewer days to the depressive haze. I can't promise that doxepin will be the right pick for anyone else in this discussion. These types of medication tend to be very hit or miss. I've certainly tried the wrong medication in the past and had terrible results. But if you can find one that works for you, it's worth it. Story 8. Ambien and trazodone. If you consistently have sleep issues, your primary care doctor will help you. These medications have saved my sanity and have made it so I look forward to going to bed at night. Story 9. I have a weird thing. I make myself count to 16 over and over again, and the goal is to always start back at 1, usually slowly breathing in and out on every 4 counts, but I don't always force myself to do that exactly. If my mind starts to wander, I force myself to say the numbers in my head and kind of picture the written number floating in my mind's eye. Usually, when I start getting sleepy, I'll catch myself passing 16, on to 17, 18, then I just, without scolding myself, realize I went too far and start over. Then soon after, I'm out. Kind of like counting sheep with a twist and without sheep. To be fair, I don't have a racing mind too often anymore. but I used to a lot when I was younger, and that always helped and still does when I use it from time to time. Story 10. I try to redirect it to something unstressful, like telling myself the Harry Potter stories or Twilight or something like that. It works probably 60% of the time, I'd guess. Story 11. Talk to a doctor about your problem with not sleeping. As someone with insomnia who only sleeps 4 hours per night, it might be worth talking to your doctor. Story 12. In the Soviet Union, we had the best way for instant sleeping. Father taught me, stand in front of the bed. Take 2 or 3 steps back. Now, full sprint and head first jump into the wall. You go sleep for at least 9 hours. It's important to have an old-school Soviet numbskull for this. Story 13. I try to take in the environment around me and really focus my senses on it. The sound of my humidifier, cars outside, how the room smells, how my blanket feels, and so on. This usually distracts me from intrusive thoughts long enough to reach the pre-dream phase where my mind starts to think about elusive and totally bizarre scenarios that I completely forget seconds later. I am usually asleep shortly after that. Story 14. Put in some earphones and get a virtual haircut from Latte Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. You can hear her scissors all around your head. It's cool. It always puts me to sleep. Story 15. 1. If I can get an hour of vigorous exercise during the day, I sleep better. Try to turn off the laptop, television, and phone an hour or so before bed. Basically, all electronics except my Kindle. Get into bed and read something relaxing on my Kindle. For example, Agatha Christie, or do crosswords. Then, when you finally turn the light off, your brain is kind of occupied with who did it or how to solve that tricky part of the crossword puzzle. The key is to have something bland that you can keep your brain focused on. If I really can't sleep, I try to remind myself that I'm actually still resting my body, even if I'm not sleeping. Pretend I'm just lying down for a nap or a rest in the middle of the day. Often, I'll drift off this way too. Story 16. Meditation is a huge help. It is probably the ideal solution. Unfortunately, I have a feeling it will not get upvoted. I feel like Reddit commenters enjoy the self-loathing comments more than the realistically helpful ones. Story 17. Reading helps. Maybe a fantasy novel to drift into or something complicated to get your brain tired. Depending on your daily schedule, working out or running around the block to exhaust your body might also help. Story 18. I fixed my sleep situation years ago. I wake up at 5 o'clock every day. I exclusively drink water and milk, so no caffeine. I have a strict exercise routine that keeps my energy levels high. I'm asleep 15 minutes after my head hits the pillow. Story 19. I find a nice, boring podcast to listen to. It's interesting enough for you to focus on instead of your racing thoughts, but boring enough that it's not putting you on the edge of your seat, invested in the story so you can float in and out of it while falling asleep. Story 20. I used to have severe insomnia every night for decades. 8 years ago, my spouse and I started sleeping on a thin mattress on the floor. Since then, I fall asleep within 20 minutes every night. I've only had a handful of insomnia nights in the 8 years. I highly recommend people try sleeping on the floor for a few nights. It might change your life. Story 21. Usually, it is a long YouTube video about some random topic from history. It helps if the narrating voice is not grating. It can be a bit tricky if you start to get invested, but typically, it does the trick. Story 22. Masturbate to exhaust myself more? Switch to the sofa so I don't awaken my bed partner. Go to the bathroom to splash some cold or warm water on my face to regulate temperature better. Earplugs. Nibble food? Apply to more jobs. Become busier and force myself to have a schedule. Do something productive like cleaning the refrigerator and bathroom. Get an earlier start on the day. Call a friend in a different time zone. Compose an email, but don't send until a fresh relook. Story 23. Melatonin. We'd used to help when I was younger, but after years of smoking it, it no longer did the trick. I tried numerous prescriptions and none worked. Melatonin has worked great, though. Story 24. Put some documentary or nature stuff on TV, deliberately not something I'm very interested in, and put on a 30-minute sleep timer. If I didn't fall asleep when the timer goes off, rinse and repeat. Story 25. Learn to let things go, to stop trying to figure things out. Just allow yourself to not be the one who solves all the issues of the day. Find something you like to do that only involves self-gratification, a hobby or activity that you like, no matter how insignificant or trivial others may think it is. Story 26. I listen to that while trying to sleep, and I just put my full focus on listening to that. Could be a story, someone rambling about random stuff with a soft voice, or just sounds. It helps me sleep and not think about driving a car into a McDonald's to steal the secret formula which would allow me to fly into space and get sun fluid. I just typed the random story at the end so that you understand how my brain makes up random stories if I let it go wild at night. Story 27. Happens to me every night. Severe insomnia. Some nights I don't sleep at all. I've learned over the decades to lie as still as possible and get as much rest as possible. Rest can carry me through 3 to 4 days of no sleeping, and then my body just shuts down and I sleep like a baby. Story 28. My failsafe trick is this. I put on an audiobook or something familiar on my phone, like Netflix. It should be something familiar so I'm not trying to stay awake to avoid missing it. The key is to set it at a really low volume so I have to concentrate to hear it. That way, there's no brain space left for ruminating or mind wandering. These days, I usually fall asleep within a couple of minutes once I lie down properly. I also train myself to associate 2 particular positions with sleep, so if I lie down in that exact position, it's almost guaranteed to get me to sleep. Story 29. Very low-dose edibles slow my brain down just enough to fall asleep. Melatonin gave me nightmares and always left me feeling hungover, and I stopped drinking. Autonomous sensory meridian response, or a comfort show for background noise. Story 30. I have insomnia. I've tried all the prescriptions and most make me feel like a zombie, so I can't perform at my job. Yes, some good medical grade turned my life around. I sleep 4 to 5 hours a night now, as opposed to 1 to 3 every 48, and have had the most productive year of my life by far. I've smoked since I was 12 and I'm 45 now, but getting actual medical grade stuff and talking with the pharmacist has been absolutely life-changing. I would highly recommend it. Some of the people working at the dispensaries really know their stuff and are actually interested in helping you. Story 31. Closing your eyes and lying there does give you rest, not as good as rapid eye movement sleep, but you do get rested. Reminding myself of this helps me relax, and then I eventually do fall asleep. Story 32. Put on something to pay attention to that is either boring or not interesting enough. Just something to keep your attention but doesn't really interest you. Sometimes, as an alternative, there are Bob Ross supercuts with a black screen, no beginning or ending credits, and it's mostly him working with a palette knife for about 8.5 hours. Works like a charm. Story 33. I play some music, something calm with no lyrics, and I focus on it. I personally need something to occupy my brain to keep it from running away from me. Story 34. Good sleep hygiene and screen time limits prior to bed are important. Try some yoga nidra. It has helped me a lot in the past. CBD gummies and melatonin. When I'm anticipating a bad sleep, I'll take these about an hour before bed. Speak with a physician about it and some sleep aids in extreme cases. Story 35. Starting with your head, spend 10 to 15 seconds relaxing each part of your body, working your way down to your feet. Maintain controlled breathing the entire time. Head, neck, shoulders, arms, midsection, hips, upper legs, lower legs, feet. It forces you to relax your body and muscles since you're more than likely tensed up. And it forces your brain to concentrate on something other than whatever it is you have been thinking about. Story 36. Put your brain to work. Imagine a place you are familiar with, other than your home, and walk through it with your imagination. Look at every detail in your mind. Go through the drawers. See what's in them. Go to the next room in your mind and repeat. You'll be asleep in no time. Story 37. I try a few different things. First, I move into a mildly uncomfortable position. For me, it is on my stomach with both arms under my head and pillow. I like that for maybe 5 to 10 minutes until it's too uncomfortable. Then, I roll into my usual position, and it's like a flush of comfort over my whole body. Often, I will drift right off to sleep. If that doesn't work, I get up, use the bathroom, and drink a few gulps of milk in the kitchen. It's like a restart. If that doesn't work, a shot of tequila does it every time. Story 38. I play Sudoku or logic puzzles to lull my mind into a single focus. Can't turn your brain off usually means your thoughts are scattered. If you can get them focused, it's easier to turn it off. Story 39. I lie in bed and meditate to this, then start astral traveling and smoothly transition into dreaming. Story 40. I rely on sleep medication, sadly. If I'm out, I take medicine that has sleep-related side effects, typically allergy medication because my allergies are bad, and that sometimes puts me out. If I can't sleep at all, I'll usually put on an 80s sitcom and binge until I fall asleep. Not that they're boring, it's just what comforts me. Story 41. I read for 10 or 15 minutes before I turn off the light. A book, not on a screen, not news. I usually fall asleep right away. If I don't, I daydream or fantasize. My favorite fantasies are about space travel and time travel. Another thing I do is keep a regular schedule and go to bed at about the same time every night, from 10:30 to 11. And lastly, I don't eat or drink alcohol 2 hours before bedtime. Doctor's orders, I have reflux, but I think it helps. Story 42. I read for 30 minutes before bed. It usually calms down my brain and I drift to sleep. If that does not work, I play sounds on my phone like train sounds or rain sounds, things like that. I also take 10 milligrams of melatonin in the evening. But sometimes nothing helps, so I just toss and turn all night until I finally fall asleep at around 4 o'clock in the morning and then the alarm goes off shortly after. It is what it is.